Good evening. It's great to be, joining you again. Um, what do we got? So, really excited to have the opportunity to join you this evening because I've had the chance to be on so many people's podcasts and videos, and they usually ask me the questions. Now I get to ask the questions. But it's more important than just what the question means. It's about setting an environment for people to feel comfortable asking questions. Parents in particular. Many parents, grandparents, and people who care about kids often feel like their questions are dumb. They feel like if they ask the question, someone's going to question their ability to parent or grandparent or be there for children. And so we've titled this No Dumb Questions. Not no as in N-O, but no as in K-O-W. K-N-O-W, sorry. K-N-O-W. A Dan Quayle moment. K-N-O-W. And the purpose of this is to encourage you as a community to push yourselves to ask the questions that you wouldn't otherwise ask, because it's super important. I mean, if you're in charge of children, whether you're in charge as a coach or a pastor, or you're a teacher or a counselor, social worker, principal, anybody who's fortunate enough to have children be a part of your life, you have questions. And one of the things that I'm proudest of is the work that I've had the chance to do on television has presented people with information from our work in the schools. For those of you who I'm meeting for the first time, I'm Dr. Steve Perry. I'm the head of schools and founder of the Capital Preparatory Schools in New York and Connecticut. We've opened schools in Hartford. We've opened schools in Bridgeport, Harlem, and the Bronx. And these schools are grades K to 12, working primarily with Black and Latin children. These schools are primarily serving poor children. So they're urban. They're urban schools with all the problems of an urban setting, but also with all the potential of an urban setting. In that role that I have, what I do is I get to be a part of children's lives. And along the way, I'm invited into the homes of our families. Through their children, sometimes their children's great decisions and other times through their children's bad decisions, I get to meet families. And I get to meet families at a time when they're most vulnerable, when they're most in need of an opportunity to ask questions. Right at that point where I can tell they're either going to straight strangle this boy if he does this again, or they're going to break down. Parenting, leading children, being a teacher, being a principal, being somebody who works with kids, if you don't have questions, you're not doing it right. If you don't leave interactions with your children or parents and other members of your community without having questions, then I promise you, you're doing it wrong. There is little that is more humbling and in many cases humiliating than having to take care of children. So we created No Dumb Questions, K-N-O-W, Dumb Questions, because I wanted to create a space for parents and educators and coaches and anybody who works with kids or people who just want to figure out how to work through their relationship, because I get questions all of the time. Much of my time on Twitter is spent debating silly things about politics, but that's not really what I do. What I really do is work with families. What I really do is participate as a leader on a team that goes into some of the poorest communities and provides access to a quality education, which means we have to be able to get the confidence of the community that is then followed by the confidence of the parents, that is then followed by the confidence of the children. And we have to galvanize around the children. We have to create this opportunity for the children and the parents to be together. And from that, I've had the opportunity to learn. I've learned so much, and I'm learning so much. I'm learning because I'm required to learn. What I'm learning, I want to share. I want to share it with you as a community. I want you to be able to share with your friends and family. Anytime, this is always funny to me. I knew that our show, Save My Son, was going to be a hit. Not because I'm some sort of TV guy, because I'm really not. I'm a social worker. Not because I know anything about a hit, but because there's something in television called an upfront. And what that is a preview of the show. The show, they do this big, well, before COVID, they do this big event, and they on a big screen, and the fancy executives are there, and the salespeople are there, and they all are previewing the show so that you can see what the show is about and what's going to matter. So at the Save My Son upfront, I had one of the executives at TV One, after the video played and I spoke, ask me if she could talk to me. And I said, of course, you're the boss of everybody, and boss of me, so yeah, of course. And she said, I have a question. And I said, that's sure. I'm thinking she's asking a question about the show because, we're about to shoot this entire season. And she begins by saying, I have a son. And the rest of her question belied the fanciness of her gear. It was inconsistent with the setting that we were in. I mean, I was at work, but I wasn't at work. I was there as, I guess, entertainer. I wasn't there as a social worker. And she asked me the same questions that I get from parents like you. She wasn't asking me questions as an executive. She was asking me questions as a black mother with a black son who she was trying to have live a fantastic life. So I get questions all the time. I mean, all the time. And I want to encourage more people to send the questions in. And when those questions come, I really haven't had a place to answer the questions. When I'm doing television, when I'm very, very fortunate to be a part of Fix My Life, which we have a great big surprise for you, and I can't really tell you about it, but I just want to tell you that on May 15th, the season finale of the series finale, you got to be there. You got to be there. You got to be there on OWN. But when I'm doing television, I don't have the opportunity to talk back to you. There's sometimes I'll live tweet during it and people say, what happened with that person? Why didn't you do this with this person? It's not the same. This is your opportunity to ask questions. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine and mentor, Bishop T.D. Jakes. And he said, man, you need to take the conversation to the people. You need to let them ask you questions about what it is that's going on, because it doesn't matter if a person's in the pulpit or in the pews. If they're a parent, they have questions. So I'm glad you're joining us tonight. I'm glad you sent us some of your questions. I'm going to go through some of your questions, and I'm hoping that you'll be one step closer to the confidence that you need in order to support your children. See, confidence precedes competence, meaning that when you think you could be good at something, you actually become closer to being good at it. I was born on my mother's 16th birthday. I wasn't supposed to be here. Third generation in poverty. I wasn't supposed to be here. Housing projects, wasn't supposed to be here. But I believe I'm here because of the lessons that I've learned as somebody growing up in that setting and as someone who spent his entire career in this setting. So I want to begin with one of the questions I received. I want to shout out the title of the person. I guess this is their Instagram handle. She saw Save My Son, which was a series that we did a couple of years ago. And in the series, there's a clip of a grandmother whose grandson was using drugs. He was selling drugs, and he had weapons like a shotgun and some other things, and he had them all on him. And this grandmother was hell-bent on saying that her grandson had nothing to do with drugs. And so I showed her a picture. And when she looked at the picture, she said, those are not my grandson's drugs. And I showed a picture of him with weapons. And she said, that's not my grandson's gun. And I said, well, ma'am, it's his in the picture. And even if it's not his, he shouldn't have it. Can we agree on that at least? And not unlike many parents, she got mad at me. I mean, she got really, really, really mad at me. So many mothers who are trying to raise their sons, not say trying to, but who are working their behinds off to raise their sons or grandsons, they have spent so much time being made to feel bad about what's happening with their son that I, even in my role as someone who is trying to support them, I mean, they came to the show, I didn't go find them, I can become an enemy. And in her mind, I was the enemy. And she became enraged, yelling at me and telling me that I wasn't helping her grandson, telling me that if I wanted to do something, I need to go help somebody else. And she told me that what I was doing was hurting her grandson, and what I was doing wasn't helping her grandson, and that I was accusing her grandson of something he didn't do. So I said to her, I will go help someone. But in the meantime, your denial is destroying your grandson. So Inspirations by Chanel wrote, she said, my sister's stepson was killed by a business owner because his grandparents and dad had the same denial attitude. Now, I haven't seen these questions. There's no prepping. I don't have this. I'm just reading you what it is. Inspirations by Chanel went on to say that her sister's stepson, I guess that's her sister, made excuses for him, ignored all the warning signs, and even the trouble he got into was overlooked. She went on to say that sometimes grandmothers trying to raise grandchildren is the worst thing that could happen. She says they are in the grandparent mode, and other than fussing and hollering, they aren't very good at really consistent and impactful discipline and correcting consequences. I understand what I think Inspirations by Chanel means. I think what she's trying to say is that a grandparent, in the context of the traditional grandparent, is there to be a support. They're the sixth man if you were playing basketball. They're not a starter. They're not who you lean on to win the game. They're the person who you stay with on the weekend. They come up on holidays. They might even, as if the children are small, they might even watch the child. But a grandparent raising a teenager is often seen as the recipe for destruction. It's often seen as a likely negative end. One could argue that the reason is because they're multiple generations removed, that their energy is lower than a parent who is just a couple years older than the child, and that the reason why they cannot relate to the child is because they're so much older and with so much less energy, they're playing out of position. And as such, they want to be more focused on being the doting grandparent than being the disciplinarian that a child often needs, especially a boy. I get where they're coming from. I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. In many cases, grandparents end up raising grandchildren because the parents have fallen short of their responsibilities. In many cases, the reason why a grandmother is even asked or expected to raise a child, in many cases, even by herself, is because the mother and or father have fallen so short of their responsibilities that they need somebody to step in. And it doesn't matter who that person is. And in this case, it is the grandparent. Further, in many cases, you'll find that the parent who's dealing with her or his or their own issues hovers around the child. And in their hovering, they're in a child's life, they're out of the child's life. They're in a child's life, they're out of the child's life. And they don't establish a proper sense of authority. But they're in and out enough to deconstruct the authoritative relationship that should occur between the leader of the house, which is the grandmother, and the children. So it is their intersection into that child's life, the in and out, that can cause real problems. And then, lest we forget that chances are, if you've lost care of your kids, then you've really jammed yourself up. The courts do not take children from parents easily. As somebody who works in schools, there are times when I've tried to get the courts to take a kid away from the parent because their lifestyle was so dangerous that inevitably it was going to kill at least them, but likely the children as well. And I can tell you, I've rarely been successful in getting the courts to come in. So if the court has come in and given someone other than the primary parent access to that child in full responsibility or custody, things have gone miserably wrong with that parent or those parents and that child. Which means that along the way of the things going miserably wrong, what's also happened is the child is suffering through trauma. The child is seeing the foolishness of their parent or parents and trying to reconcile what's going on. They're trying to make sense of, here's a person who's supposed to be my mom or my dad or both, and they're supposed to live a particular way. They're supposed to be responsible adults, and they're as irresponsible as anybody. And then I'm supposed to listen to them? And as the child gets older, he starts to, generally talking about boys here, he starts to disconnect from the mother and or father as authority figures. He still loves them and he still wants to have a relationship with them, but it's real hard to respect somebody whose issues are just so grossly displayed. He doesn't get why would you even have a child if you're not going to take care of him, is what many children end up saying, doing, and feeling. So they see this parent acting like an ass. They don't see them as having mental health issues. They don't see them as substance abuse issues. They just see them as being weak in many cases. And then they try to understand, how do I respect somebody who I don't respect? How do I love somebody who I love but I hate? How do I deal with that? And then the grandparent, who's usually functioning in the role of it as an advisor, weekends, evenings, helping to care for a toddler, vacations, holidays. Now they're the primary caregiver. And in their role as primary caregiver, in many cases, many grandparents are stuck because they feel a sense of guilt about the fact that they did, or feel that they did, such a piss poor job of raising that child's parent that now they have to do it over. And so in that guilt, they want to project onto the child what they wish the child to be, as opposed to what they see. And so that's where the denial comes from. The anatomy of the denial is having to accept responsibility for the failures that they feel that they've had as a parent, the failings of their child, who is their grandchild's parent, and the newfound responsibility that they have for a child who they really just want to dote over because they're a grandparent, not because they're weak, but because they're a grandparent. What I offer to those grandparents is an acceptance of what is. It is what it is. You did your best as a parent, didn't work out. Let's learn from what you did as a parent. Let's learn from the fact that in many cases you probably made excuses for their mother or their father. You probably made excuses as to why the teachers are calling you all the time and what they're talking to you about, and you didn't believe everything that they said, and you kind of got tired of them calling you. Parents now will block us at the school. I mean, it's just typical. Parents block us all the time. Caller ID is the worst thing to happen in our schools, because parents will literally stop taking our phone calls because they're tired of getting calls. I get that you're tired. I have my sons. I have 2 sons, and I've seen them get in trouble in my own schools. And so these parents are tired of getting calls, and as a grandparent, they got the calls for the mother And now they're getting calls for the son. And they're just tired. They're tired. They're tired of having these arguments with people. They're tired of feeling like they're just bad people, because to feel like a bad parent makes you feel like a really horrible person. So to the grandparent who's struggling with this, I got to tell you, whatever the circumstances that made you the primary caregiver, they are what they are. Structure is essential. Every child needs structure. Give them all the structure you can. Excuses are the tools of the weak. Every single time you make an excuse for a child's bad behavior, you are putting them in a position to make worse decisions. And the more you defend them, the more likely you will need somebody to defend them legally. And the more you baby them, the more likely they are to become a mama's boy. And mama's boys become baby's daddies. And baby's daddies are not what you need in your life. Hold them accountable for their decisions. Even when you know that you feel like the teacher went a little far, they don't need to know that you feel that way. If the ref's calling a tight game, then you got to play a different game. If the teacher is somebody who's problematic, then you deal with the teacher. You don't tell the child that the teacher's a jerk and the teacher doesn't love them, because all that does is make your life more likely to be filled with phone calls. Excuses don't help anybody. So I don't want to blame the grandparent, and I don't want to, the fact that it's real tragic that your sister's stepson was killed. That's horrible. There's no good way for that to happen. Man, it's terrible. But if you're somebody who sees a grandparent struggling like this, you're a coach, you're a pastor, you're a sister, you're whatever, help. Nobody needs your judgment. This is from Styles_Mike12. He says, black single mothers destroy black sons. And then the question is, do you think black moms love their sons and raise their daughters? And then another question is, what is your take on positive male or positive masculinity, and how should it be celebrated? So y'all gave me a lot with that one. All right, Styles_Mike12. I'm not going to blame black women for destroying our sons. That's ridiculous. I have no idea what it's like to be a black mother raising a son by herself. As I mentioned, I have 2 sons. I'm raising them with my wife and with our support network and with our schools and with the fact that we're upper middle class and that we have extended family, and still that mess is hard. It's still hard. It's still hard. And I pray every day that it gets easier, and it's not gonna. If I take into consideration what I believe to be the positive intent in your question, Styles_Mike12, I have seen many mothers who lost trust in black men. Not trust any black men. And so when we do try to help, I've watched them kick us to the curb. One of the wildest things I've ever seen was a couple years back. My sons were playing youth football. We had the next game, so it wasn't my team. It was a team that was playing before us. And I looked on the sidelines, and there was a mother on the sidelines. And I thought, oh my God, what happened? First of all, a mother on the sidelines is just weird. But the mother had her son in his full uniform, full football uniform, shoulder pads, pants. He was holding his helmet. I thought, oh my God, what happened? And I figured an ambulance must be coming, because why the hell is this? Like, what's going on? And she's sitting there stroking his head. Like, I'm thinking, oh my God, what happened? He just got hit. He wasn't injured. There was no ambulance. She was just there to baby the hell out of this boy. I mean, baby him in a way that I found grotesque. I thought, what the hell is she doing? It was so tough for me to look at. I thought, oh my God. I can imagine when I was growing up, if my mother came out there, oh man, I'd hear for the rest of my natural life. I can understand how somebody looking at that would say that she's destroying that boy. She's doing what she thinks she would want as a child, which means that she's doing what she thinks she'd want as a little girl. She's not doing what this boy needs as a young man. She's doing what makes her feel good. She's going to what she knows. She's trying her best because the brother who's supposed to be there with that boy to look at him from across the fence and say, get up, put your helmet on and play because you're here to play football. If you're not hurt, you're going to be fine. Get over yourself. Because that man's not there, that mother came right around the fence, sat on the sideline, sat on a bench, which I've never seen, and just caressed his head, and he laid his head on her shoulder, over his shoulder pads, and I had to walk away because I couldn't take it. I get why many brothers end up feeling like she's ruining him. But if we're going to be honest, whoever put her in that situation is ruining him. Whatever man knew or didn't know that his son had a football game that Saturday and he wasn't there, that's his black ass that messed up. Not that mother. She's doing the best she can. She's doing everything she can. She ain't got time to be trying to figure something out that she has no idea about. She's doing the very best she can. And doing the best she can, she's stroking the boy's head. Where I struggle is when I've tried to go in and be supportive of some of these mothers. And they have so little trust for the institutions from which I come, which is education, me as a black man, and somebody from the outside, that it's hard to break that. So it's incumbent upon us, Mike Styles _ Mike 12, to instead of judge this sister, help her, build a relationship with her. Let her trust you that you can help this boy do what he needs to do. I happen to know the rest of that story, and it doesn't get a lot better. It just doesn't. That young man, he's not living up to his potential. And his mother is his biggest defender. And she's got a reason why everything happens. And it's not him. It's not her. And that's not good. It's not good. Moms, I would say to you, I'm not going to give you a pass any less than I'm going to give that brother who wasn't there for that child a pass. You can't make an excuse for every bad decision your child makes. They're kids, they make bad decisions. And when they make bad decisions, you got to own that. It doesn't mean that they're bad people, but that is a bad decision. And every time you make an excuse for a bad decision, it just moves the bar forward more for more bad decisions. It doesn't actually ameliorate the decisions. It makes them proliferate. And you don't need that. So there's nothing wrong with a boy crying. He'll get over it. And that young man wasn't that hurt. And what she did that day was an indication of how she normally raised him, which was to basically let him make whatever excuses he wants. On the same token, I am so sick and tired of going to community events like football games and basketball games and seeing so few brothers there. If you know somebody who is a black man, who is a Latino man, who has children, and you're not holding them accountable, then you're a co-conspirator. That mother's not destroying that child. Those of us who let that man off the hook, that father off the hook, that's on us. We all own a piece of that. And because we all own a piece of it, we got to do better. And doing better means stop letting them off the hook. I'm going to go to the second part of the question. We're running out of time. Do black moms love their sons and raise their daughters? I think they do the best with both. And what I've seen a lot of moms do, especially when girls become teenagers, is they really butt heads. And I've seen so many mothers try to soften the responsibilities of their sons. If you have the capacity to engage with a brother who becomes a baby's father, then you have a certain understanding, acceptance of foolishness. You just do. Most people wouldn't tell you that because they don't love you enough to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you. If you feel like you always got to take care of this dude, like if you're the primary breadwinner, you're the earner, you're always, come on, man, come on, you're always putting up, he's about to, then you are creating an environment, and rare is the occasion that the apple and tree are going to be so separate. Meanwhile, I've watched mothers expect their daughters to be able to be 10 feet tall and bulletproof. They expect them to know how to cook, clean, and run a household. Meanwhile, the son is in the other room watching video games, feet up, hasn't showered in a day or two, and he's not being chastised for that. Excuses are being made for him. So I have seen that. Many mothers let their sons off the hook. And you do it in the simplest of ways. He goes in there, you tell him to do the dishes. You got to tell him 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, and he goes in there, he starts doing the dishes, and then you go in, you hovering over the top of him, you saying him to do the dishes. He's doing the dishes. You say, you're doing the dishes wrong, as if there's a right way to do dishes. Like, just wash until you get the stuff off of them. If you don't have a dishwasher, but whatever that you told him to do. And then you jump in there and you start doing the dishes for him. And I'll show you how to do the dishes. And he's sitting there like, go ahead. Now, my sister's already done her chores. You doing my chores. I'll just sit back and let you holler at me. And then I'll go back and play my video games. That's what they mean when they say you raise your daughters and love your sons. And you don't see it. You don't see that, wait a minute, I just let this clown off the hook. You tell him he's got to do laundry. He's got to do his laundry. And you stay on him to do his laundry, but he doesn't do his laundry. At some point or another, you get so sick and tired of it, you just pick it all up and you're hollering at him the whole time. I'm tired of doing your laundry. He's not. He doesn't have any problem with you doing his laundry. He is completely comfortable with that. That's what they mean. That's what I mean when I say that you are loving your daughter, because you wouldn't do that for your daughter. You wouldn't even dream of doing that for your daughter. And we see this all the time when you have a son and a daughter. The daughter has all the responsibilities in the world. She's got to be the reasonable person. She got to do well in school. And then your son can act like a straight ass. And you can always find an excuse as to why that happened. That's that guilt. Parenting through guilt is a very dangerous thing. Don't do it. So, here's the final part of that question. What's my take on positive masculinity? Yeah, masculinity's been taking a beating right now. Like a real beating. We treat every man who's got some sense of bravado now as if they're some sort of predator. We treat men like there's something inherently wrong, like we got to be something that we're not. Every man is not going to be the same, but in many cases, if you want an alpha male, then you have to accept it, and the alpha male is going to act a particular way. It doesn't mean they're going to be rude, disrespectful, but they're going to have a stance about them. They're going to have an opinion, and they're going to be strong in that opinion. And they're not going to be as willing to capitulate, and they don't see themselves as needing some wife or woman to raise them. There's nothing to me that's more disgusting than to hear a mother say or a wife say, I have 3 kids. I got my 2 children and my husband. What are you doing? In front of your kids you say that? What are you doing? So you undercut his masculinity to establish your authority in the house? How does that help anybody? Nobody needs that. Nobody needs that. I got to pick his clothes out for him. Really? You're with a man, you're sleeping with a man whose clothes you need to pick out? I'm not suggesting that it's not a problem. I mean, it's a problem for you to like him to be wearing certain things, but to feel like you got to take care of him is problematic. And to be offended by the fact that he doesn't want you to, also problematic. I have seen in schools these alpha males from the littlest to the biggest. I've watched teachers emasculate them. I've watched teachers emasculate boys. You got this strong-willed boy, and he's tough and traditionally like a boy. And I watch, and they treat that behavior like it's the most lethal thing on earth, especially when that boy is black or Latin. Black children make up 18% of all kindergartners in the United States of America, yet make up 49% of all out-of-school suspensions. 49%. Because when we see a little black boy who seems like he's too tough, he's too strong-willed, he won't bow down, oh man, that is the biggest threat to the system. And so when a boy's got to go through that, being beaten down all the time, they start to hate school. They start to hate being in positions, and they struggle with women. They struggle because most of the people they're going to be encountering in that setting are women. Elementary schools are pretty much run by women. Bad, good, or indifferent, it is what it is. And so when you're a boy in that setting, you're constantly being put down by that, and you're going home and your mother's, then you're hearing women differently who make you feel bad for being a boy. I'll give you a quick for instance. If you gave a group of kindergarten girls a doll, call it Barbie, and you gave a group of boys a doll, let's call it an action figure, let's call it G.I. Joe, the girls would come up with scenarios and stories and things that they would do, and the family and the husband, and they would play together. They'd have a whole scenario. They'd do her hair, they would hook her up. That's what I've seen. You give that same age group of boys a G.I. Joe, first thing you're going to do is take his clothes off to see if he's got a pee-pee. Then after that, they're going to take his arms apart. They're going to beat each other with it. And they're going to chase each other around with it. They're going to roughhouse with it. That's what they're going to do. That's the way that they play together. They don't play like the girls play. They play like boys play. And this is what happens next. This is where the emasculation starts, and even in the classroom. And then the teacher is going to call you, and she's going to say, your child did something sexually inappropriate by saying the thing about the pee-pee. The child destroyed school property by taking the doll apart. And then what they're going to say is your child was part of something and they were fighting. And your son is going to look like, I don't know what I did. I was just doing what my body told me to do. When you give me something and you put me around a bunch of boys, we're supposed to break it. We're supposed to smash it. We're supposed to bang. That's how we play. That's how boys play. That's masculinity. That's not them being destructive. That's just them being boys. But there's no space in our society for boys to grow up in that same way and feel good about that. So what has to happen is we have to find a way to both respect the positives of masculinity and when it gets out of control. And boys start to do things to exert their force on girls, which is never cool. All right, folks, I did not get through all your questions, but I did get the opportunity to talk to you. So this is what we're doing. Every Thursday night at 6 p.m. East, we're going to gather right here. Same bat time, same bat channel. Send your questions to us. You can go to at Dr.Steve Perry on Twitter. You can come on Facebook where you found this and ask your questions. And the more interesting your questions are, the better. So that's why we call it No Dumb Questions. We call it No Dumb Questions because there are no dumb questions. Your questions are important. And knowing dumb questions means that you understand that we all have questions. And they sometimes seem dumb. Parents often ask me questions like, Dr. Perry, does it make sense that my 15-year-old does not shower? Is there something wrong with him? Afraid not. That's just what they do. Well, why does he leave just a swallow of juice in the refrigerator? He has got more juice in the cup that he leaves in the living room unattended than is in the container that is in the refrigerator. Why would he do that? Well, he does that because he's so focused on what he's doing that he's going from one task to the other because he's a boy, he's task oriented, and he's not thinking about the fact that he's left all these things along the way. Before I came and shot this, just 39 minutes ago, I looked in the sink. We have a dishwasher. And there was a pot, a pan, that somebody had made eggs. My niece lives with me, my wife and I live together, and my son lives with us. Whose do you think it is? There are no dumb questions. We're all parents. We're all trying to figure this thing out. No dumb questions, which means understand that any question you have is valid because it's your question. Please share your questions again with us at Dr. Steve Perry or here on Facebook. We're going to do all we can. And remember, on May 15th, Iyanla Vanzant's Fix My Life. On May 15th, Iyanla Vanzant's Fix My Life. We have a great big surprise for you. I can't wait for you to see it. Thank you so much. If you're like me, you got to go now find the boy in your house and make him wash this pan that he's going to look at like, I have no idea how that got there. Have a great night.